In the summer of 1942, deep in Montana's Hell Creek Formation, a museum curator named David Dunkel made a discovery that would haunt paleontology for the next 80 years. It was a skull, small, perfectly preserved, and utterly confusing. It looked like a Tyrannosaurus rex, but it was tiny, barely 1/6 the size. The teeth were different. The arms were longer. The bones were fused, suggesting an adult animal. But how could an adult Tyrannosaur be this small? They gave it a name, Nanotyrannus lancensis, the tiny tyrant. For 30 years, scientists have battled over a single question. Was this a separate species or just a teenage T-Rex? The answer was finally revealed in October 2025, and it changes everything we thought we knew. About the final million years before the asteroid hit, this isn't speculation. This is the story of how a single throat bone rewrote prehistoric history. Our story jumps forward to another Montana discovery, this time by ranchers Clayton Phipps and his team, but this wasn't just a skull. This was something unprecedented. 2 complete skeletons locked together in stone, a Triceratops and a small Tyrannosaur preserved in what appeared to be their final battle. Scientists would later call them the Dueling Dinosaurs. The Tyrannosaur earned a nickname, Bloody Mary, but here's where it gets complicated. For 14 years, this fossil sat in legal limbo. There were property disputes and court battles. Museums tried to buy it and failed. It almost disappeared into a private collection where scientists would never get to study it. Then, in 2020, the Montana Supreme Court made a ruling. The North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences acquired the specimen, and paleontologist Lindsay Zano assembled a team with one mission: determine once and for all if Nanotyrannus was real. What they discovered didn't just answer the question. It detonated decades of assumptions about Tyrannosaur evolution. Dr. Zano and her colleague James Napoli had a problem. How do you prove an animal was fully grown when it died 66 million years ago? The answer lay in biology. When vertebrates reach maturity, their bodies leave signatures. Growth rings in their bones slow down or stop, just like tree rings. Bones fuse together, vertebrae lock into place, skull sutures close. These changes don't reverse. They're permanent markers of adulthood. The team used cutting-edge technology, CT scans, histological analysis, and growth ring counts. They examined Bloody Mary's vertebral column. It was fully fused. They checked the skull. The sutures were closed. They counted the growth rings and cross-sections of bone. The analysis suggested the animal was approximately 20 years old. 20 years old, done growing, and fully mature. And it weighed only 704 kilograms. An adult T-Rex weighs over 8,000 kilograms. Bloody Mary was barely 15% of that mass. If this was a teenage T-Rex, it would mean Tyrannosaurs somehow shrunk as they aged, which is biologically impossible. But size alone doesn't prove a species is different. Animals can be runts. Growth can be stunted. The team needed anatomical evidence features that develop early in life and don't change. And they found dozens. Nanotyrannus had proportionally larger forelimbs, more teeth, fewer tail vertebrae, and distinct nerve arrangements in its skull. These are all features fixed early in development and biologically incompatible with T-Rex. Let's break that down. Nanotyrannus had more teeth than T-Rex, and this was consistent across multiple specimens. Tyrannosaurs lose teeth as they mature, they don't gain them. Nanotyrannus had proportionally longer arms. Again, arms don't grow faster than the rest of the body as an animal ages. And the skull? It had different nerve pathways, different bone structures, different everything. As Dr. Napoli put it, for Nanotyrannus to be a juvenile T-Rex, it would need to defy everything we know about vertebrate growth. But the debate needed one final piece to connect everything. The original Nanotyrannus skull, the one discovered back in 1942, had been sitting in the Cleveland Museum of Natural History for 80 years. Without other bones from that same individual, scientists couldn't definitively prove its maturity. Then, Dr. Caitlin Collery noticed something. A small bone, easily overlooked, sitting in a box right next to the skull. It was the hyoid, your throat bone. In December 2025, A team led by Dr. Christopher Griffin published groundbreaking research in the journal Science. They examined the microscopic details of this hyoid bone and compared them with those of modern birds, crocodilians, and other dinosaurs. What they found was definitive. The hyoid showed growth signals matching a mature animal, confirming that the Cleveland skull belonged to a distinct and adult predator. The tiny bone that everyone ignored for 80 years finally solved the mystery. Nanotyrannus was real. So what does this actually mean? Measuring under half the size of an adult T-Rex, Nanotyrannus likely competed with young T-Rex individuals for the same prey. Think about that. Two different Tyrannosaur species, hunting in the same landscape, targeting the same food sources. Nanotyrannus wasn't a baby T-Rex. It was a completely different evolutionary strategy. It was lighter, faster, more agile. While T-Rex became the ultimate heavyweight predator, Nanotyrannus stayed small and quick. The conformation of Nanotyrannus means that predator diversity in the last million years of the Cretaceous was much higher than previously thought. For decades, we thought the late Cretaceous was experiencing a slow extinction, that dinosaur diversity was already declining before the asteroid hit. Nanotyrannus proves that assumption wrong. The ecosystem was thriving. It was complex, competitive, with multiple Tyrannosaur species packed into the same time and place. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The team identified subtle differences between Bloody Mary and another famous specimen called Jane. The differences were enough that they proposed Jane might be a second Nanotyrannus species, Nanotyrannus lethaeus. How many other juvenile T-Rex specimens sitting in museum collections are actually distinct species waiting to be recognized? Of course, science isn't about final answers. It's about evidence and debate, and some paleontologists remain cautious. Dr. Holly Woodward Ballard urged researchers to examine more specimens before accepting the findings completely. Dr. Thomas Carr, one of the biggest Nanotyrannus skeptics, now accepts that Bloody Mary is distinct from T-Rex, but questions whether Jane should be classified as Nanotyrannus. But here is what matters. Leading skeptics like Steve Brusette commented that the overarching mic drop of this paper is that Nanotyrannus is real. The scientific community is converging on a consensus, not because of belief, but because of evidence. A skull discovered in 1942, renamed in 1988, debated for 30 years, and finally understood in 2025. 83 years to solve a mystery that was literally sitting in a museum drawer the entire time. This is how science actually works. Not with dramatic eureka moments, but through the slow, meticulous accumulation of evidence. New technology reveals details we couldn't see before. Different eyes look at familiar specimens and ask new questions. As Dr. Collery said, by applying a new technique to a specimen that has been in the collection for nearly 80 years, we unlocked information that's been there all along. The fossil didn't change. Our ability to read it did. So here's where we stand. Nanotyrannus lancensis is confirmed. There's a possible second species, Nanotyrannus lethaeus, under investigation. We now know that multiple Tyrannosaur species were competing in the same ecosystem. The Cretaceous wasn't winding down into extinction. It was thriving with a diversity we're only just beginning to understand. And somewhere in Montana, in rocks still waiting to be split open, there are probably more species we've never even imagined. The teenage T-Rex that never existed has become something far more interesting, evidence that even the most studied creatures on Earth still have secrets left to reveal. This is the story of Nanotyrannus, not a juvenile, not a myth. A real animal that shared the last million years of the Cretaceous with the king of dinosaurs. This is deep time. This is discovery. This is science rewriting itself one tiny bone at a time. For more on prehistoric life, subscribe and hit the notification bell.